G'day, this is John Blake, and as promised, I have got a very short video for you on rapport. So in the last email I sent you guys, we talked about the importance of rapport, the importance of getting the first part of the sales process right, which if you do that, the rest just tends to flow. So you need to create that connection. The person needs to relax with you in order for the rest of the conversation to go smoothly. So in terms of rapport, in terms of allowing that to happen, there are three key things, three key elements, three key principles. One is the headspace. So you need to have the right headspace, and we're going to talk about that. You need to have and use the right language and ask the right questions right off the bat to engineer that situation where they are relaxed enough to talk to you as a business equal about the possibility of working with you. And there are also some key ideas around behavior that we need to keep in mind as well. So the idea here is for you to be able to use this information, this content immediately in order for you to fast track rapport and therefore fast track trust with your client. So here we go. So headspace. Now, one of the best things you can do is to access a resourceful state. So what does that mean? Accessing a resourceful state means that you go back in your mind to a particular time where something worked very, very well for you. So you could have won something, you could have been given an award, you could have simply had a time in your life where you knew that you had succeeded, you knew that you had done particularly well and you were being rewarded for it. So what you do is, as you're sitting in your car, just about to go in to have your meeting with your business-to-business client, or they're just about to come in and meet with you, you visualize this particular event in your mind. And what you need to do is you need to go back there, you need to recall that exact event, and more importantly, the exact moment where you had the peak of sensation, that peak of feeling, knowing that you had done particularly well. So you need to recall the feeling that you had in that situation. You need to remember what you saw, and you also need to remember what you heard. So those three things combined will help you to access that particular state. So you're essentially visualizing that particular state on the movie screen of your mind or through your eyes. Either one is fine. You will have a particular preference for one of either one of those two, and then what you do is that you move straight out of that scene into the scene that you're just about to go into with your client, and you visualize everything going perfectly. You visualize everything going as well as what it possibly could, given the way that you want things to turn out. So that is how you access a resourceful state. So this has its roots in the work of a guy called Maxwell Maltz, who's got two awesome books out. One, they're older books, but they're fantastic. One's called Psycho-Cybernetics, and there's another one called Zero Resistance Selling, which are both fantastic books, and I would highly recommend that you get a hold of them. And there's a lot more on this type of information in there. But getting your headspace right is highly, highly crucial to being able to create the right result when you actually meet with a client. The second one is very akin to the first one, and it's assuming rapport. So how do we assume rapport? Well, the best way to assume rapport is to actually have the feeling that we want our client to have ourself first. The idea being is that you cannot give away what you don't have yourself, right? So you assume rapport, you access that state, and then you are more likely to produce it in your client. So the opposite to this is where you're feeling anxiety, where you're feeling intimidated, where you're feeling unconfident. On some level, even if it's not highly visible, on some level, if you're feeling it, that feeling will leak out of you, and they will experience that on some level. And it might not be on a conscious level. It will probably be on a subconscious level. And how that will show up is that you'll finish the meeting, and if they were talking to an associate or someone else in their business, they'll say, you know what, there just was something that just wasn't quite right, and they won't be able to put their finger on it. And nine times out of 10, it'll be because you had some element of anxiety or intimidation within your headspace, and I can tell you it makes a massive difference. I've coached people on both of these ideas, the access resourceful states and the assuming rapport. I've used them myself, and I can tell you that they both work really, really well. If you start doing this stuff, it will work for you. Okay, so let's move on to language. Now, language is highly, highly powerful, highly crucial when you're talking to people, especially at the front end of a conversation. So there are two elements that we're going to talk about here. We're going to talk about how, asking this particular question, how did you get into this business anyway? Why would you ask that? Why would you ask that? So the reason that you would ask that is that it gives the person an opportunity to talk about themselves. It gives the person an opportunity to tell their story. People love to tell their story, and as they tell their story, they will relax, they will access the feeling of pride, which most people have, especially if they've had a good journey up into their level of seniority within a particular business. And you will also be able to identify areas of commonality, points in common that you have with that particular person. So that is a particularly powerful question to ask. And then in terms of points in common, there are typically 4. So there is family. So, you have children, I have children, we can talk about children, and we can talk about that in a sincere way because we both share that in common. Occupation. People are passionate about their business. If you can get them talking about their business, and especially if you're self-employed, it's a very, very powerful place for you to be in terms of creating rapport. Recreation, golf, tennis, hockey, surfing. If you have that in common with them, it's a great place to go in terms of your rapport building conversation. And nationality, if you're from the same place, if you're from the same town, if you're from the same country, you have that in common and you can talk about that. So why do you both need to have it in common? Because in traditional sales training, they'll say, well, just talk about what the client is into. So if he's into golf, just talk about golf. But if you don't have that in common, what happens is that people can see that it's transparent because people know people are sales savvy. They know what salespeople do to try and create rapport. However, if you have that particular item in common with them, then it can't be perceived as anything other than sincere. The great thing about sincerity is also the worst thing about sincerity. You can't fake it. You can't fake sincerity. So if you have that in common with them, you can have a sincere conversation. You both have a sincere interest in the same thing, and it is a great place to start in terms of rapport. So those two key elements in terms of language, very, very powerful. Now, behavior. So behavior, positioning. Now, how do you position yourself in relation to your prospect? So when you're talking to a prospect, what you want them to be doing is experiencing what it is that you're saying in a logical way. So how do you do that? You need to engage the logic part of the brain. So how do you do that? Well, to engage the logic part of the brain, you need to sit on the logic part of the brain is the left part of the brain. So to engage the left part of the brain, you need to sit on that person's right, because the side of the brain that you engage, that you sit on visually, will actually engage the opposite side of the brain. So sit on the right hand side of the prospect, it will engage the left hand side of their brain, which means that they will experience what it is that you're talking about from a logical perspective. Again, this is a very advanced type idea, but it works. I've done it myself, and it definitely works. In fact, I've interviewed, there's a particular guy that I know who has a boutique recruitment business in Asia, and he was telling me, I was asking him to explain to me what it is that he does, because he sells a very high ticket item in terms of placement. He makes millions of dollars per placement in his recruitment business. And he related to me that when he talks to a client, he has to sit on a particular side of that particular client, and it was consistent with what it is that I'm telling you to do, and that is to engage the left-hand side of the brain. You need to sit on the right-hand side, or to that person's right-hand side brain, to engage the left-hand side of their brain so that they experience what it is that you're saying in a logical way. Again, more advanced type thing, but all these 1%ers, they all add up. Okay, the other one is modeling. So what is modeling? So the idea is that you actually model the person in terms of their body language, so how they're sitting, so what is the angle of their spine, what is the tilt of their head. You can model their energy. So if they are an animated person, you need to become more animated in the way that your gestures, in the way that you talk to them. And the other way that you can model them is in speech. So you can model the speed of their speech, the volume of their speech, and the cadence of their speech. So the cadence of their speech is the rhythm of their speech. So all of those things add up and work particularly well in terms of creating rapport. How will you know if you've got rapport? You will feel a change in the energy with the person, and at that point you can then start to ask them questions about what it is that you need to talk to them about in order to work out whether you can help them or not. So I hope this has been beneficial. As I said, my goal was to give you some content that you can use straight away, and I will have more for you. As I said, I am going to be releasing a more detailed version of what it is that we're talking about here today, and I will give you details of that as we go. But for now, I am sure that you will be able to get some good use out of this particular idea in terms of rapport, these different strategies that we've been talking about. Good luck with it, and I will talk to you soon. I would love you to leave a comment in terms of some feedback on the blog on this. It'd be much appreciated. Talk to you soon. Thanks.